There is a version of your life where you never move. Not because you failed, not because you were trapped by anything dramatic. You just didn't. Every year there was a reason to stay that was slightly better than the reason to go, and 15 of those years stacked up on top of each other. And now you've lived in the same 800 square feet for longer than most people stay married. Everyone will tell you this was a mistake, that you burned $200,000 on somebody else's mortgage, that you have nothing to show for it. They're wrong, but not in the way you're hoping. Because the apartment did pay you, quietly, every month, for 15 years, more than most people's raises. The problem is what it charged you for the privilege. Let's live in it, year by year, all 15. Year 1, $980 a month. You're 26, and it's a number you can say out loud without wincing, which at 26 is the entire definition of affordable. The apartment is not nice. The kitchen drawer sticks. There's a water stain on the bedroom ceiling, shaped vaguely like Ohio. The radiator bangs at 3 a.m. like someone hitting a pipe with a wrench, because that's exactly what's happening. You tell yourself this is temporary. 2 years, maybe 3. It's a landing pad, not a destination. You sign a 12-month lease. You do not read it. Nobody reads it. You hand over first month, last month, and a deposit. $2,940. Everything you have. And the landlord, Ray, who owns 4 buildings on this street and fixes them himself, hands you 2 keys. He says, "Don't put anything down the garbage disposal that you wouldn't chew." That's the whole orientation. Year 2, $1,005. The renewal letter comes in an envelope, which even then feels old-fashioned. $25. That's the increase. You do the math, $300 a year, and you feel something you will feel 13 more times and never once name correctly. You feel relieved, because you'd braced for worse. Your friend across town got hit with 140, so 25 feels like being let off. You sign it that afternoon, and you don't think about it again. Here's what actually happened, and nobody will tell you for 13 years. Ray didn't do it because he likes you. He did it because you're the cheapest tenant he'll ever have. You pay on time, you never call. An empty unit costs him a month's rent, a paint job, a listing, and a stranger who might be a disaster. You are not being rewarded. You are being retained. Those are different things, and the difference will cost you. Year 3, $1,030. The couple in 3B moves out. A week later, someone new moves in. And in the way of small buildings, you find out what they're paying. $1,150. For the identical unit. Same layout, same stained ceiling, same wrench-on-pipe radiator. $120 a month more than you. And something switches on in your brain that will never fully switch off again. A little scoreboard. For the first time, staying isn't just the absence of leaving. It's a position. You're winning something. You're up $120 a month. You'll check this scoreboard every year you live here. Year 4, $1,030. No increase. Ray's wife is sick, and he isn't sending letters. This is the year you stop seeing the apartment. The drawer still sticks, but your hand has learned the angle. The ceiling stain is still there, but your eyes root around it. The radiator still bangs, but you sleep through it now, and on the rare nights it's quiet, you wake up. Nobody warns you about this. You don't fix a place you're leaving, and you've been leaving for 4 years. So instead of the apartment adapting to you, you adapt to the apartment. Every flaw becomes a habit. Every habit becomes invisible. And an invisible cost is a cost you will never subtract from the scoreboard. Year 5, $1,060. Somebody moves in with you. They have opinions about the apartment immediately. Why don't you fix the drawer? Why don't you ask about the ceiling? Why don't you move? You can afford more now. And you say the sentence, the one you'll say for a decade. For what we pay, you'll never find this again. It's true. It's completely true. It's also the first time you've used the rent as an argument for not doing something. And once a number starts winning arguments, it stops being a number and starts being a personality. 2 people now. Same 800 square feet. Same 980 adjusted to 1060. The scoreboard doubles. It feels like a strategy. Year 6. $1,085. You get the raise. The real one. Not the cost of living nudge, the actual promotion. The one with a comma in a new place. You look that weekend. Actually look. $1,400 places with dishwashers, second bathrooms, windows that open. And you run the numbers, and the numbers say, that's $315 a month more. $3,800 a year. To live somewhere with a dishwasher. You close the laptop. Understand what just happened, because it's the hinge of the whole 15 years. The raise didn't go into housing. It went into the trips, the restaurants, the car payment. Things that don't compound. The apartment didn't save you money. It freed up money. Those are also different things. Whether it mattered depends on what you did with it. You put it nowhere it could grow. Hold that thought. Year 7. $1,085. The relationship ends. And here is the cruelty of the number. You can't leave. Not because of feelings, because of arithmetic. Alone at 1085, you're fine. Alone at anything else in this city, you're not. So you stay in the apartment where it happened. You sleep on the same side of the bed you always did. Moving to the middle feels like admitting something. Everyone else in your situation gets a fresh start, a new place, a new light through a new window, the standard issue reset. You get a rent you can't beat. That's the first real invoice. Nothing that matters shows up on the scoreboard. Year 8, $1,115. You know the building now. You know that the hot water is unreliable on Sunday mornings. You know the guy in 2A works nights. You know which mailbox key sticks and how to hold the front door so it doesn't slam. Ray waves at you from his truck. He's older now. He calls you by name and asks about your mother, who he met once, 6 years ago, for 4 minutes. This part is genuinely good, and I won't take it from you. Something real happens when you stay somewhere long enough that it stops being a location and becomes a place. Most people never get it. The average American renter moves so often that they never learn which stair creaks. You have it. It's worth something. It's just not worth what you're about to be charged for it. Year 9, $1,150. $1,900. Same building, same layout, same Ohio-shaped ceiling stain probably, because Ray patches those with the same paint he's used since 2011. You are paying $1,150. The market says $1,900. $750 a month. $9,000 a year. You screenshot it. You send it to a friend with 3 laughing emojis and the message, never moving. You are, at this moment, correct. That gap is real money, and it is genuinely yours. But watch what the gap is doing. It isn't a discount anymore. It's a wall. Every dollar makes leaving more expensive. At $200, you could still leave. At $750, leaving has a price tag. The nicer the deal gets, the fewer options you have. That is not how deals are supposed to work. Year 10, $1,180. Your friend buys a house, and someone asks you the question. At the housewarming, holding a beer, in that helpful tone, you're still renting? Here's the honest ledger, and it's more complicated than either side wants it to be. 10 years in, you've paid $130,000 and own nothing. That's real. That's gone. But your friend paid closing costs and a new roof in year 3, and property tax every year, and a special assessment nobody mentioned, and will pay a commission to sell. Their equity isn't their appreciation. It's their appreciation minus all of that, smaller than the number they say at parties. So who won? Neither of you yet. Because renting only beats owning if you invest the difference. And you know exactly where your difference went. Year 6. The trips, the restaurants, the car payment. Their house forced them to save. Nothing forced you. That's the real answer. And it isn't about rent versus mortgage. The apartment gave you a surplus every month for a decade, and never once required you to do anything intelligent with it. Year 11. $1,205. You are now the longest tenured tenant in the building. 11 years. Everyone who was here when you arrived is gone. You've watched roughly 30 people cycle through 6 units. The grad students, the couple who fought, the guy with the drum kit, the family who left for a suburb. You're the memory of the building now. New tenants ask you how the heat works. And you notice something at the mailboxes. You don't know any of their names. You know the building. You stopped learning the people around year 8 because they leave and you don't. That's the second invoice. Year 12. $1,240. Ray sells the buildings. He's 74. His knees are finished. He tells you at the curb, apologetically, like he's letting you down. And he is, though neither of you can see the size of it yet. The new owner is not a man. It's a company with a name like a law firm. Within a month, there's a tenant portal, a convenience fee, and an email address instead of a phone number. Nothing bad has happened. Everything has changed. Ray was running a relationship. He gave you $25 a year because he knew you. The company is running a spreadsheet. And on that spreadsheet, in a column marked Lost to Lease, one row says, 3A is $1,100 below market. You are no longer the cheapest tenant they'll ever have. You are the biggest number on the page. Year 13. $1,280. The renovations start upstairs. 3B goes first. 6 weeks of noise. It comes back with vinyl plank flooring, white quartz, brushed nickel, and a listing photo taken with a wide-angle lens. $2,400. Then 2A. Then the ground floor. One by one, the units around you are converted from apartments into assets, and the machine runs one direction. A tenant leaves, the unit is stripped, the rent resets. It never goes backward. They haven't touched your unit. Of course they haven't. Renovating around a sitting tenant is expensive and slow. You think this means you're safe. It means you're next. Year 14. $1,310. The building is full of strangers paying twice what you pay. And you feel it now. The specific unease of being the last old thing in a renovated room. Nobody's been rude. Nobody's threatened you. The emails are polite, signed by a name that changes every 4 months. But you have started doing something you never did in Ray's time. You have started keeping the emails. Year 15. $1,345. The letter says your lease will not be renewed at the current rate. The new rate is $2,600. $2,600 from $1,345. Nearly double in one envelope with 60 days notice. And now, you finally run the numbers you've been avoiding for 15 years. 15 years of rent. $205,000. Gone. No equity, No asset, nothing with your name on it. What you have to show for it? A $980 deposit from 2011, which they'll find a reason to keep. And to leave, the only option now. You need first month, last month, and a deposit at market rate. $7,800 before a single box is packed. Plus movers, plus the difference. $15,000 a year, forever, starting immediately. Here's the trap, and it's beautiful in the way that traps are. For 15 years, you were told, and you told yourself, that the below market rent was the win, the scoreboard, the thing you were up. But you never converted it into anything. It sat there. It was never money in your hand. It was money you didn't spend, and that disappears unless you catch it. Every year the gap widened, it did two things. Made your position look better. Made your exit cost more. That's what the discount was. Not a gift. Not a reward for loyalty. A lock. One that got stronger every year, held by someone who could open it whenever the spreadsheet said to. Ray never opened it. That's the only reason it took 15 years. So was it a mistake? Here's the part the internet won't tell you, because it doesn't fit on a graphic. What it genuinely bought you: no roof, no property tax, no special assessment, no commission when you leave. 15 years without one Saturday under a sink, and $130,000 you never locked up in a deposit. What it actually cost you: not the $200,000 in rent. Renters aren't scammed, and owners aren't geniuses. It cost you the fact that the surplus was invisible. Nobody sends you a statement for money you didn't spend. No app ever showed you the $750 a month you were up. So it never became anything. They didn't beat you on real estate. They beat you on forced savings. Their bank made them. Nobody made you. Staying still isn't the mistake. Staying still is a strategy, and it can be a good one. The mistake is running a 15-year strategy without ever collecting on it. How long have you lived where you live now? And do you know what the place next door rents for?